Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother and sister, welcome back to Islamic Notes channel. In this video, we will discuss a surprising and touching story. This story is about a Japanese archaeologist who finally decided to convert to Islam after researching a mysterious tomb believed to be the tomb of a prophet. The tomb was found behind the Great Wall of China. This story is not only about archaeological discoveries, but also about guidance, truth, and the power of faith. It starts with a man who never knew Islam. His name is Hiroshi Haruto, a Japanese archaeologist who is now 50 years old. Since he was young, Hiroshi was known to be intelligent, quiet, and very diligent in the field of history and ancient culture. He completed his archaeology education at Kyoto University, then continued his postgraduate studies in anthropology and Middle Eastern history in England. Hiroshi was born into a family of Shintoists, a traditional Japanese religion that upholds nature, ancestral spirits, and spiritual spirit. His father was a lecturer in East Asian history, while his mother ran a small family shrine in the countryside near Osaka. Since childhood, he was often taken by his father to visit ancient sites, and that was where the seeds of his love for the world of archaeology grew. But who would have thought his interest in ancient history would actually become a path of guidance that changed his life? It all started with a scientific journal. Hiroshi read a report about the discovery of a mysterious tomb in a remote area of the Great Wall of China. The tomb had unusual symbols and writings, and some experts believed that the tomb held the body of a great figure in Islamic history. Hiroshi, who was at that time researching ancient trade routes between Central and East Asia, was very interested. Why were there Arabic symbols in a region so far from the Islamic world? Driven by curiosity, Hiroshi went on an expedition to the location with a small team. After traveling through the barren mountainous plains, they arrived at a hidden segment of the Great Wall that was not open to the public. That's where Hiroshi's life began to change. Upon arriving at the location, they immediately felt a different atmosphere. The place was quiet and isolated. There was no signal, no sound of vehicles, only wind and the crunch of sand. According to local residents, the tomb was found by a lost hunter. Since it was discovered, the place has given off a fragrant aroma like musk, even though there are no plants or flowers around it. Hiroshi entered the small cave leading to the burial chamber and found strange carvings on the walls. Not Chinese symbols, but similar to ancient Arabic letters. In the center of the room lay a large stone tomb with simple ornaments. A tombstone has an engraving on it that touches his heart, even though he doesn't yet understand its meaning. Hiroshi then contacted his colleague, who is an Arabic language expert. Several days later, he received a translation of the engraving. Here resides the patient servant of Allah, who guarded the prophetic trust, Zulkifli alaihis salam. Hiroshi fell silent. He had heard the name Zulkifli before, but this was the first time he felt so touched. He started reading Islamic historical literature, going through manuscripts, watching documentaries on the prophets. He began to get to know Prophet Zulkifli, a prophet who was known for his patience and obedience to Allah. Hiroshi stayed there for days. He felt a peace that he had never experienced before, even when he was in his family shrine. One night, he dreamed that he saw a man in a simple robe, with a calm face, looking at him and pointing to the sky. When he woke up, his heart was full. He felt like he had just been touched by something holy. Hiroshi began reading the translated Quran and found the name Zulkifli in 2 verses, Surah Al-Anbiya, verse 85, and remember the story of Ismail, Idris, and Zulkifli. All of them were among the patient. Surah Sad, verse 48, and remember Ismail, Ilyas, and Zulkifli. All of them were among the best of people. His research now changed direction, not only about history, but also the search for truth. He learned about monotheism, prophethood, Islamic values. He found that Islam does not contradict reason, but rather enlivens the heart. His nights were spent alone, reading Islamic literature, and reflecting on his search. However, guidance did not come without a test. Hiroshi began to question the teachings he had believed in since childhood. He realized that leaving his ancestral religion was a big decision. In his journal, he wrote, "If I have found the truth, will I dare to live it, or will I persist because I am afraid of losing it?" but shouldn't a true search bring the courage to change? And that night, Hiroshi made a big decision. He contacted a Muslim professor from Turkey and expressed his intention to convert to Islam. In front of the professor and two other Muslim witnesses, Hiroshi recited the two sentences of the Shahada. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. The tears broke out. There were no hugs, no crowds. Only Hiroshi sat on his knees with wet eyes and a heart full of gratitude. Since that day, Hiroshi was reborn. He began to study Islam more deeply, learn to pray, read the Quran, and slowly change his lifestyle. However, not everyone welcomed his decision. His family was shocked, and some even rejected it. His fellow scientists thought he had lost his objectivity. But Hiroshi remained calm. He said, "I did not lose my objectivity. I actually found the main objective in my life, to know my Creator." He began to share his story through writing in scientific forms. His book, The Hidden Prophet, My Journey to Islam Through the Tomb of Zulkifli, became a bestseller in Japan and Europe. He did not preach by force, but through example and knowledge. Some of his students even became interested in Islam. The most touching was his mother. The mother, who was elderly, one day said, "If this religion makes you a more peaceful person, then maybe I also want to know it someday." Subhanallah. Guidance, although it comes slowly, always brings peace. Who was the Prophet Zulkifli alaihis salam? Mentioned in two verses of the Quran, he was known as a patient and the best person. Some scholars call Zulkifli a prophet from the children of Israel, who accepted a great mandate when others rejected it. He was known to be honest, fair, and very devout. In an interview, Hiroshi said, "Zulkifli may not be a famous prophet like Moses or Jesus, but I learned from him the importance of holding on to your mandate and remaining patient even if the world rejects you." Since converting to Islam, Hiroshi Haruto's life seemed to have found a new axis. He not only became a Muslim in identity, but he really tried to live his life according to the Islamic values that he had learned. He began to involve himself in a small but warm Japanese Muslim community. With them, Hiroshi took basic Islamic classes, learned to read the Quran with tajweed, and understood the meanings contained therein. The most touching thing was when Hiroshi managed to complete his first complete reading of the Quran, even though it was in translation. He cried, not because it was difficult, but because he felt like he was talking directly to his God, whom he had been searching for in silence. Time continued to pass. Hiroshi did not remain silent. He began to initiate interfaith discussion programs on campus and in the institutions where he worked. He wanted to bridge the understanding between Eastern culture and Islamic values, which he said were not contradictory but rather complementary. "Islam does not belong to Arabs alone," he said in one forum. "Islam is a light for anyone who loves the truth wherever they come from." What Hiroshi did inspired many people. He is not a preacher, not a religious teacher. He is simply a sincere seeker of truth. And from that sincerity emerges the true power of preaching. Preaching with manners, knowledge, and exemplary behavior. Even some of his students at the university began to be interested in studying Islam because they saw the serenity that radiated from Hiroshi. Until one day, Hiroshi decided to perform the Umrah pilgrimage. With Allah's permission, he was able to set foot in the Holy Land. He wept bitterly when he saw the Kaaba for the first time. "I used to dig the ground to find history. Now I prostrate myself for eternal life," he said with teary eyes. In front of the Kaaba, Hiroshi prayed that his mother would also be given guidance. Good news came. Several months after Hiroshi returned from Umrah, his elderly mother finally asked to read a book about her son's journey. She didn't talk much, but one day in front of the family altar, she simply said, "If everything you've been through has made you a more patient, honest, and calm person, then maybe I should also start to know your God." MashaAllah. This is the power of guidance. It does not come with thunder, but flows gently like water that soothes the heart. From Hiroshi Haruto's journey, we learn one important thing. Every human being has a unique path to Allah. Some receive guidance in the mosque, some are touched by the Quran, and some, like Hiroshi, find it behind the ruins of a silent tomb at the foot of the Great Wall of China. And remember, guidance is not only for those who are far from Islam. In fact, sometimes those who need guidance the most are us. Those who claim to have faith but are negligent in worship. Those who know the truth but postpone it. Those who are close to the Quran but rarely read it. Don't let us be like an empty glass in the rain, looking wet but not holding a single drop of goodness. Hiroshi started from zero, learning the Hijaya letters, learning ablution, even learning to cry in prayer. Then us? What is our reason for not changing? Aren't we the ones who should be the first to be grateful and improve ourselves? Let's start today with small steps. Re-intend our prayers as a meeting, not just an obligation. Re-hold our Quran, even if it's only one verse a day. Say salawat as often as possible, because in it there is calm and love for the Prophet. And finally, never underestimate someone else's search process. Maybe today they don't understand Islam, but if we are a good example, maybe through us, Allah will open the door to guidance. As Hiroshi says in his book, I didn't abandon my old culture. I just chose the truth that made my soul feel alive. And Islam is a home for my soul which has been lost. Because accepting the truth is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a new struggle. Hiroshi had to face his family's incomprehension, cultural distance, and also pressure from the academic community that had always admired him as a neutral scientist. However, in the midst of all that, Hiroshi did not waver. He did not choose to argue, deny, or force his beliefs. He chose to live by example. He answered all doubts with changes in himself, with morals, with simplicity, with consistency. And that is the most powerful dawah. Slowly, the people around him began to change. Friends who used to sneer began to ask questions. Students who used to only see Hiroshi as a history teacher now see him as a teacher of life. In fact, several scientists who were initially skeptical began to open themselves to understanding Islam from a more philosophical, more spiritual side, because they saw Islam as not just a doctrine, but a way of life that brings peace. Hiroshi not only learned about Islam, he also began to teach what he understood. He founded a small community in Kyoto where Japanese converts could learn Islam gradually, not only learning the procedures for worship, but also understanding the meaning behind each movement of prayer, the meaning of each verse of the Quran, and the wisdom behind each of the Prophet's sunnah. He knew that Islam is not a religion that can simply be memorized, but it must be absorbed and lived. So he started from simple things, learning to be patient when slandered, learning to be sincere when losing, and learning to be grateful even if he only gets a little. He said, I am not looking for a religion that promises heaven easily. I am looking for a path that teaches me how to be a better person, even before I die. Hiroshi Haruto's story is getting wider. He was invited to various international conferences to discuss the relationship between science and spirituality. At one forum in Istanbul, he stood calmly, then said, I did not become a Muslim because I was disappointed with science. It is precisely because of science that I realized that there are still many things that cannot be explained by logic. And when logic stops, that's where faith takes over. MashaAllah. Those words made the participants silent. Some even shed tears. Because that is the essence of true seeking. When the mind and the heart walk hand in hand, what is found is not only knowledge, but also peace. From Hiroshi, we learn that faith is not an inheritance, but a choice. Many of us are born into Islam, but neglect to care for it. While out there are those who have to travel thousands of kilometers, overcome obstacles, and even lose everything just to find Islam. So never feel satisfied just because we are Muslim, because status does not guarantee depth, and labels do not guarantee safety. What Allah values is our efforts to continue to return to Him, even though it is slow, even though we fall and rise again. And remember, guidance is Allah's right. It can come through unexpected paths, through the stories of strangers, through books that are accidentally read, or even through dreams on a quiet night like Hiroshi experienced. Since the day Hiroshi Haruto said the Shahada, it does not mean that everything has been easy. In fact, tests after tests have come one after another. But that is where the strength of faith is tested. When Hiroshi returned to Japan after his trip, news of his conversion to Islam spread quickly in the academic community and his family. Many were surprised. A history professor, a graduate of a prestigious university, suddenly embraced a religion that had been considered foreign to many Japanese people. At first, his mother cried, not because she was angry, but because she was afraid of losing her only son. She was worried that Hiroshi would change, move away from family traditions, and no longer visit the small shrine left by his father. But Hiroshi gently explained to his mother that Islam did not make him hate his past. Islam actually taught him to respect his parents, to maintain kinship, and to love the truth sincerely. He began to introduce Islamic values slowly, without forcing. He continued to visit his mother, help her at home, and perform prayers in a small room that he transformed into a simple prayer room. At every opportunity, he continued to show his love as a child, and slowly his mother's heart began to melt. One day when Hiroshi was praying Subuh, his mother sat quietly outside the room. She listened to the recitation of Al-Fatiha with great emotion. After Hiroshi finished, his mother said softly, "If this religion makes you gentler, more patient, and more loving to your mother, then maybe I also want to know her someday." Subhanallah. That is the miracle of Dawah Bilhal, conveying Islam through behavior and example. How deep is the power of guidance? How wonderful it is when science, reason, and heart unite in the search for truth. And now Hiroshi Haruto is no longer just an archaeologist. He is an author, speaker, and inspiration to academics and the general public. He wrote a second book, From the Ruins to Revelation, which discusses his spiritual transformation with a scientific and philosophical approach. The book has been discussed at several European and Asian universities, bringing together people of different faiths for peaceful dialogue. He also regularly attends Islamic studies in Tokyo, joins a Japanese convert community, and guides people who are new to Islam. But he remains humble, continues to research, continues to record history, only now with the light of faith in his heart. In an interview, Hiroshi said, "I never thought that the search for history would lead me to the creator of all history. Now I realize that every ancient ruin, every mysterious symbol, and every trace of the past are all traces of God's greatness. We just need to open our hearts to see it. Never underestimate our small steps towards Allah. Maybe today we only read one verse, maybe just learning one prayer. But who knows, that's the beginning of a long road to heaven. Remember, guidance comes to anyone who seeks it sincerely, not to those who know best, but to those who are most willing to humble themselves, willing to admit mistakes, and willing to change even if little by little. May we all be given a soft heart, useful knowledge, and strong faith like Hiroshi Haruto." Time passed, but the light of guidance that entered Hiroshi Haruto's heart never went out. It actually shone brighter. Several years after his conversion to Islam, Hiroshi decided to perform the Hajj pilgrimage. He saved up the results of his research, postponed several major projects, and finally left for the Holy Land. For a convert who used to live in logic and historical analysis, witnessing the Kaaba in person was an experience that could not be expressed in words. He stood looking at the direction of the Muslims' Qibla, a place that for thousands of years had been the axis of prayer for millions of people from all over the world. His tears fell, not because he was tired, but because he finally felt like he had truly come home. During his tawaf, Hiroshi prayed in halting Arabic, but full of hope. "O Allah, you guided me from the ruins of time to the light of truth. Now accept me as your servant. Do not let me go astray again, and guide me to bring more souls to you." That is the beauty of Islam. It is not the religion of the Arabs, nor the heritage of a particular nation, but a universal way of life revealed by Allah to all mankind. Islam can come to a farmer's child in a remote village. It can enter the heart of a career woman in a metropolitan city, and it can knock on the soul of an archaeology professor from the land of the rising sun. Because guidance does not see our skin color, title, social status, or past. It comes to those who are serious about seeking the truth. After performing the Hajj, Hiroshi Haruto returned to Japan with a different face. Not physically, but inwardly, radiating from the look in his eyes. He was no longer just a professor. He was now also a preacher. He began to give public lectures on Islamic civilization, inserting the values of monotheism in the midst of historical discussions. He no longer only talked about ancient Egypt or Babylon. He now talked about a civilization built by revelation, not just by humans. Among his students, some began to be interested. They saw a change in the professor. His authority remained, but was now shrouded in gentleness and love. He no longer exploded during discussions. He listened more. He started more often with Bismillah and closed with Alhamdulillah. Hiroshi Haruto became a real witness that Islam is not only for people who were born as Muslims, but for anyone who wants to seek the truth with an honest heart. We often forget that guidance does not come because we deserve it, but because Allah is most gracious. A Quraysh infidel like Umar bin Khattab could become a lion of Islam. A murderer of 99 lives can be forgiven only because of his intention to repent.